and welcome to Creating in Color, sharing the creative endeavors of people of color. I'm your host, Kaybe, and today I'm joined with Laur, a storyboard artist whose past projects include Cleopatra in Space, Spirit Riding Free, Deathstroke, Q-Force, and Chicken Squad. How are you today, Laur?
I'm good. How are you, KB?
I'm well, thank you so much for asking. So, what is a storyboard artist?
Okay, so in my mind, a storyboard artist is someone who takes the script, from the writing team, and then creates the visuals that become the template for the final show. We draw the characters interacting in the environment. We choose what kind of shots to use, where to place and move those characters, all in the service of creating the story visually. So we're telling the story visually.
It's so interesting because I've had a few storyboard artists on the podcast, and everyone describes their job differently, but essentially the same. And it's
Yeah.
just so interesting hearing how everyone.
Tends to describe it. When I'm with, my parents or someone who is maybe not as familiar with like film terms, I'm like, okay, I do comics and then they become the movies or the TV shows. Cause like, yeah, that's the template, like you build that and then it becomes that. so, but yeah, I like my job. Like I started in comics, so it was a nice segue to animation, which I've loved all my life, and I love that it both are interested in use visual storytelling as like the heart of it, and I'm able to do that for a day job, and it's great. It's great. I'm pretty happy.
Aw. You said you got into comics first. We're going to have to touch
Come
on
back to
that
it.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did you get started in the animation industry?
Going back, I didn't actually start through like art school or anything like that. I actually went to Cal as an art history major. Didn't regret that. I loved, studying the meaning and context behind images. So, what does this Leonardo painting mean? Why is Michelangelo important, or why do we think these, famous artists are important? And then was lost for pretty much in my 20s. I was like temping through like $10 hour jobs. I was like an admin assistant for an aerospace company, pharmacy technician through pretty colorful set of like jobs here and there. And then because I was a comic artist, or I was like making my own comics all through this time, I started following comic artists who were taking CDA classes. So one of them was Ben Juono, and I noticed that he was like having like success, after taking those storyboarding classes. Like he joined the animation industry, and like, oh, he's a board artist, and became a director. And we're like, oh, I messaged him one day. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this field, and like, do you have any tips or advice for me and stuff? And he actually invited me to like take his classes at CDA when I moved back to LA, because at the time I was still in Michigan. So I was like taking online classes from CGMA, which is another school that, not concept design. CGMA had like online classes available at the time. Like this was like 2016. And so when I first moved to LA, I was still temping, taking classes, working on my portfolio, and suddenly there was like this opening, like in Puss in Boots, which was the show that Ben was on. But I had like classmates that were in also working for the show, and I just realized, oh, like someone called me up one day while I was still in my day job at a marketing studio, like a small boutique marketing studio in Burbank. Oh my god, I was crying in in the parking lot, like telling my mom, like, oh, I actually made it to in animation. Like I did it. I'm going to be making cartoons. So like it was very, very emotional for me, because I've had this lifelong passion for visual storytelling, comics. It started with animation. The Little Mermaid was the thing that made me go like, when Ariel's like singing in her grotto, I'm like that. I whatever this is, I want to be a part of that because it's like shook me to my core
Mm-hmm.
to to put it lightly. I'm like, this is incredible. This is I was drawing like a lot of headless mermaids back then, like as fan art because I didn't know how to draw like a face, but I knew that seashells went this way and then that was like a fish tail. So like had lots of headless mermaids. Um but yeah, so like that was 2017. I started as a revisionist for Puss in Boots in 2017. Started storyboarding proper 20 I want to say 2019
Okay.
when directors noticed that I was like, oh, I do really well with revisions, and then a position opened up, and my friend Abby actually recommended me as the board artist to replace her when she left the show for another opportunity. So here I am.
That's so nice of your friend to recommend you, because that's another like showcase that it's important to like just kind of talk and network, and you never know what's going to happen. It's all about timing, who you know, and are you ready?
Yeah, yeah. Because I love like where I ended up and like and I'm so happy to be like going to work every day. I try to make it a point to like really get to know my crew members. So after Puss in Boots, and my next show at DreamWorks ended up being Cleo in Space, Cleopatra in Space. And I had the opportunity to work to start with the crew fairly early. So as people rolled into the crew, I made sure like, hey, I'm Laur, and like, and if you guys need anything or like have any questions, et cetera, just to try to cultivate like a space where like, hey, we can help each other and we can get to know each other. And I met Abby through there, and I love that crew so much. We're still in touch. I try to keep in touch with like my old crews and stuff because like these are really cool people to know, and not just like on a cold like, oh, some of them could actually like give me a job, like in the future. It's like, no, like they're legitimately cool people to know. Abby has like horses. She goes like horse riding, and that's like this cool thing. And getting to know people, I'm so thankful that my job allows me to meet all different kinds of people that that are not from my background, like maybe just how I'm kind of built, like, oh, I'm open to like other experiences and stuff, but it's also like a survival mechanism like on my end because I didn't grow up around here. Like I grew up in the Philippines and moved here 2002. So like I feel like I'm just like knowledge and like culture sponge. Like what, like when I first moved, especially, it was like, oh, how do I get along with people? How do I make sure that I don't hurt anyone? Like I needed to know so many things like quickly and make sure that I don't offend anybody. It's like because I grew up around a lot of people that were just like look like me, my same culture. I'm Filipino Chinese, and 2002 was like a first time I'm like surrounded by like way different people than me and from all different countries. So it was, I guess it's both a survival mechanism and just like a way to like um connect with people more too.
So it sounds like you basically wanted to be in animation once you kind of connected the dots to what animation was.
Hmm.
Um, but during this time where you were like kind of figuring stuff out in your 20s, did you consider any other industry?
Let's see. When I was still in the Philippines and like going through like university majors and stuff, like, oh, these are the available paths, to explore. Psychology was like on my mind. Like, oh, maybe I could do that because I am interested in people and I'm interested in like the way the mind works. Um, Art history had a couple of options: teaching or museums. Museums was another thing. I interned at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive for a little bit. And I think, wait, is it Chabot? San Leandro Museum. I also interned a little bit over there, but uh, there were very little opportunities to like for that path if I didn't pursue like, a PhD
Mm.
specifically in like my art history focus. That wasn't an easy way in teaching. It's like I like people, but I don't like people that much because it's like terrifying. I don't think of myself as a good public speaker. And I would much rather like absorb stuff rather than like teach. Um I end up like second guessing myself a lot. So like, okay, I don't think teaching quite like jives with me. I'm always willing to like give advice if someone asks for it, or, like give tips and strategies, things like that. But to have like a formal structural thing where I'm like, this is the knowledge that I can convey to you. My mind isn't just organized that way, I suppose. Um, and other paths. I actually took the licensing exam for a pharmacy technician. So I was a
Oh.
pharmacy typist for a little while I was in college, and my pharmacists were like, "You're pretty smart. You can try to take this licensing exam, and I know you're going to ace it." So I'm like, "Okay, let me try it," because like I like a challenge if it's brought up, and I would get a pay bump for that. My first day as a pharmacy typist, counting like little pills out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait a minute, did I say 4 or did I say 5? I was not made for math, like visual thinker, but like not in that respect. Like I was, and then I started like sweating. I'm like, okay, okay, this is just for like I could potentially like hurt people that way, and so like the repercussions of, or the consequences of me messing up was suddenly like skyrocketing. So like the stakes were too high, and I was like, "Okay, no, no, thank you. I don't think I can take this." And I stopped temping at my pharmacy, even though like like the pay was good, but like I just wanted to move on and try more art directed like jobs. I tried graphic design for a little bit, photo editing. I'm sorry, it's just like a list of all my random
No.
jobs at this
No,
point.
no.
Graphic design, photo editing. I was in an e-commerce company startup that eventually went under. Back in 2010, they couldn't get the funding anymore. But I somehow went from photo editing, like clothes on mannequins, to like being invited to their software meetings, like their software development meetings, just because I was in charge of pushing the products to the website.
Mhm.
Because like the attaching the photos would often be one of the last steps in the process. But in the process, whenever a product, had issues as they went up on the website, I they discovered that I was the one troubleshooting. So I would go to different teams. I'm like, this wasn't done yet, and this had an issue here, and this one like. So I ended up like meeting like a lot of other staff members that had nothing to do with the photo editing of the creative team, in charge of like just shooting the photos. So yeah, so I lots of weird stuff. So ending up in animation was really just like weird luck, and I want to say that it helped so much that I was on Twitter and following a lot of different people, again, because like I like the sponge. I like hearing from other people that have different voices, different perspectives than I had, and yeah, just started seeing the advice, like n- you know stories that got them to where they were. And because I had a friend that I made through my webcomics, that was another avenue that sort of eventually got me to like an art job. She recommended because she was in LA and I was like in Michigan at the time. When I arrived in LA, she actually recommended me for an internship at Soapbox Studios, which is like a small marketing, like a boutique marketing studio in Burbank. And that one actually before the animation industry was like my first long term job that involved me drawing. Um, for the first time, like, ever in my life. I mean, did commissions here and there. I sold some stuff. Like, when I was in college, I was, like, in anime artist alleys and, like, yeah, I draw Ichigo and, Ed from Full Metal Alchemist.
Ooh,
So, like,
nice.
I've made money from my art before, and commissions and private, drawings and stuff, but, like, this was, like, my first long-term gig, like, actual, like, "Oh, this is possibly a career. This is very different." And when I realized that I was drawing Disney characters because they were marketing, feature animations at the time, and I was drawing Moana, like,
Mm.
oh man, I was crying on the way back home. I'm on the 405 going like, I'm drawing Disney characters. And yeah, every day is just like kind of a gift. Like, I can't believe that I get to do this for a living, and I try not to take it for granted, even though it is hard and there is a lot of work involved, and I'm still learning. Even now, it's something special, and I just don't want to take it for granted.
Oh, that makes me happy. From your work history, you've worked on shows for younger children to adults.
Mhm.
What's the difference you notice working in these two dramatically different genres?
My quippy answer to that is less blood and swearing. 'Cause,
Fair.
in general, like, for the stuff that I've done, like Deathstroke and Chicken Squad, they both tend to be, like, shows or properties that, like, want to be cinematic as possible, and emotional, right? Like, character driven stuff. So you're always with the characters, and you wanna feature them in the best light, so, choose angles that sort of flatter and but also tell the story. So, yeah, there's not that much of a difference, at least from the shows that I've worked on, which tend to be that kind of cinematic and less sitcom-y kind of TV shows.
Your work history really is just kind of all over the place,
I
including
know it
like your
is like
animation.
if you look at it, I'm like, something doesn't quite belong because there's like Deathstroke hanging out among all of these, like, yay, like younger for children's properties. And I got Deathstroke through my friend who was like, oh, are you available for freelance? And, I got a chance to work on Deathstroke and on a really, really dramatic sequence too. Like, I was super happy when I got the sequence because it's the fight between sorry for spoilers, it's the fight between Slade and his wife. I believe her name was Abby, or Addie. And they, are like really having it at each other. And I even got like a script update, and they added like two more pages to my sequence. I was like super excited because normally I'm more like working on like younger characters, and this was my first time really handling drama, and I'm like, I love drama. I don't like drama, like, I don't like work drama. I don't like, not that kind of drama, but I love drama. I love drawing characters emoting and, or like nearly crying or angry, or like see the, like the subtle acting
Mhm.
stuff. So I was pretty happy uh to get that, and to have it like survive, like, because I've heard that Sangjin usually like extensively redraws like a lot of action scenes to make them even more like badass and stuff, and to have my sequence kind of survive that's I thought that was like, oh, this is really cool. And they used my ideas here. And actually, one of the things that I'm super proud of in that scene was to make use of the giant honking like knight painting, like a painting of a knight slaying a dragon in
Mm.
in his bedroom, and I was like, I want him to look at that when he's saying this line to his wife, because like this is all about, there's a reason why it's in his bedroom, and this is his life, this is who he thinks he is, and she has to knock him down a peg because that's his absence in their life was like more of the issue.
It's interesting because you're thinking, even for like a freelance project, of all the objects that is in this character's room and how you can utilize it to push the story even that much further.
Yeah.
So well done.
I mean, now that I've it's been a few years and I'm looking at that, I'm like, "Oh, they're not really doing anything in the space." Now, like, they're walking around, which is a good thing, you don't want your characters just standing in the same spot for, like, 5 pages, it is quite, like, a long sequence of them just talking, so I'm moving them around the space, but I'm like, I really, really wanted them to, like, interact more with the space, even more than just,
Mhm.
like, looking at the painting, and, I can see room for improvement now, but, at the time, I'm like, "Okay, this is this," and I was, freelancing on it, while I was still working full time, so, like, I did it to the best of my abilities at the time, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that sequence, ended up.
Nice. I bet it's beautiful. I'm gonna go check it out.
I was telling everyone on Twitter about it too. It's like, yeah, but CW for like blood and like gory stuff all around my sequence because it is Deathstroke. We are still talking about Deathstroke.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
What does your daily routine look like?
It's boring. Like I just wake up, have breakfast because breakfast is important. And I kind of start working immediately. I know most people have like, fun warm-up routines or like do life drawing stuff. I'm like, I check Twitter and then I start working. I work pretty fast, so I tend to like have as soon as I get a script. Let's go through like maybe after a handout.
Okay.
I'll get a script and I'll read the script, go through it. I have a process where I pull that script up and put it like on Clip Paint Studio. So I'm like copy pasting the images of the script onto Clip Paint Studio, and then I start going over like the sections. I'm like, "Okay, these are like drawing little doodles on the side of like, I think I'd like that one in a profile shot, or I think I'd like, a big wide shot here. And then this moment, what is this moment about? This is a fight. This section here is about a fight. So the direction here needs to reflect that. So, like messy thoughts first, like all on one side of the file, and then on the other side, after I've like done all of my notes, that's when I start doing like thumbnails, like quick thumbnails about like, okay, how does this shot flow to that shot? Because it's all about the transitions, right? You want your cuts to be motivated, and by that it means you want to lead, ideally, like have either the characters or um the situation lead you to the cut, like if you feel that there's going to be a cut there, and then so that's what I'm doing when I'm doing my little thumbs over on one side of the file, and then after that, once I've gone through everything, is my second pass in Storyboard Pro. Nowadays, I work on Storyboard Pro. I've worked on Photoshop before, but I feel just personally that Storyboard Pro is the better program for storyboarding because it's actually built for that and is a lighter program, I believe, than Photoshop, which takes up a lot of like memory in your computer and does things a lot more intuitive than Photoshop. It's different from show to show, but I'm glad I'm afforded the um, opportunity to work in the faster program that I prefer. And so on Storyboard Pro, I'm already going on to my second pass because after the thumbnails, you start discovering like, oh no, this is a jump cut. Like if I go from this shot to this shot, it doesn't work. So,
Right.
you start rearranging things and doing, uh, um, you know, more decisions that help improve from, the first pass at it.
Mhm.
So, I'd like that I've built up like iterative phases into my process, and then from there, once I've done my first pass, or my first pass basically on Storyboard Pro, I immediately try to get in touch with my director, because then, I want to see if even if it's like super sketchy at this stage, I want to see if I'm going in the right direction, because like, oh, um, I can have an image of my head of how uh, a scene can go, but if it doesn't match what's right for the show, or what my director thinks, like, oh, I think this is a better way of handling that scene, then I have to go with them, because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about like I lend my voice to it, of course. This, the way I draw, the way I choose things, but I am a collaborator at the end of the day. I am here to be of service to the show. So I like collaborating with incredible artists, incredible storytellers, and that isn't an issue with me to immediately put up my work for, like, hey, what do you think? Am I going in the right direction here? And then, I'll get feedback for that. And it doesn't hurt me at all to have, a bunch of shots changed, or things um arranged around, because like, we don't have the budget for that, or, like there's lots of small things like that that end up changing, my original plans for the boards and the episodes, and I don't mind it at all. I love the collaborative process nature, TV animation specifically, because I've only worked in TV animation so far. So yeah, ends up becoming like 5:30, or 6, depending on, how soon I woke up, and, and like what my schedule is. That's when I'm like, yay, okay, now I'm done with work. Here comes the anime, here comes the manga. I'm like, it's me time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
I feel like, especially for some people who might be focusing on developing their portfolio for story,
mhm,
that may be in school, or maybe they're looking to just make a career shift.
mhm,
And sometimes it's easy to forget that it is animation as a whole is very collaborative, and
mhm.
you're not just a team of one, you are a team of many.
Mhm.
And don't try to baby what you do, because
Yeah.
it might end up getting tossed.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always been a fast sketcher. So like, as a kid, I used to draw comics all the time in pencil and scrap paper. And these comics would get shared around in my class, like, look, like, oh, there's this like there's a new issue of like the adventures of Laur and her hot anime boyfriends.
Oh
So
shit.
I mean, Laura and friends, it wasn't just
No, no,
me.
no. Hot anime boyfriends, you said it.
And then, so I there was already a sense of like, okay, art isn't as precious to me as maybe to some other people who maybe work on like a painting that takes hours and hours and hours. It My relationship to art is a little bit different. So it's the economical, like, okay, did I get that across? And then, I'm okay with like sending it off. And like pencils, so like there was like a cheap disposable nature to it, like scrap paper, and then like, oh, I don't have to keep this, but like, it's yours, it's yours. I give it away to friends, like, just to start off, like that was already kind of my relationship to the stuff that I make. So it
Mhm.
felt like a good transition when I went from comics like that to my own personal comics to like animation, that it's not quite something that I would labor over and then at the end of the day be like too precious about my feelings wouldn't get hurt if people were to give me feedback and help make it better, like help tell the story better. I appreciated that from people who believed enough in me to give me that feedback and to give me advice, because they're like, oh, you could be really, really good at this someday, so here's some advice, because I know that you're going to take it and move forward with it, as opposed to someone who doesn't seem like they were going to take it in the spirit it was given, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so I was open to that, open to learning from my directors and my coworkers and stuff like that. So just remember, like, as advice for people who are like interested in the industry, yeah, it's a collaborative medium. So you are part of a team, and all of you guys are doing your best to help make it the best story that you can make it. But it's also not the end of the world if things get changed around, because we do have executives, we do have, powers that be that will decide about the tone of the story, about like flow of the story perhaps, or concerns about like the characters and things. So sorry, I'm like losing myself, blah blah blah. I'm losing myself a little bit. But anyway,
There's a lot of hands
there's
in
a
the
lot
pot.
of hands in the pot is what I meant to say. Thank you.
Mhm.
And yeah, at the end of the day, you just try your best and you're part of the crew. So, like no feelings need to be hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to have full creative control over art that you make, I highly recommend making your own stories, like, doing comics like I do. Like, my stuff is not for sale and not for I'm never planning on pitching like my personal comics, because those are for me and for me alone. I mean, I like sharing them online for anyone who wants to read them, but there's no money signs attached to it, as far as like, oh, will this, fulfill like a certain quota, or, will this make us enough money, ROI, like a return of investment, et cetera, et cetera. Nope, nope, nope. None of that. None of that. It's just purely me and the characters I want to write and the situations I want to draw. And I feel like that's the best way to kind of preserve your creative juices in a way that doesn't bump against like the corporate entities that you work for. If
Mhm.
that makes any sense. Like,
That makes complete sense because dollar has a lot of creative say.
it does. Yeah.
And so if you're not expecting any money and no one's giving you any money to produce it, then you could do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I like anime and manga stuff, and so my stuff tends to be anime inspired, and inspired by a lot of the stories that I loved growing up. And no one can say like, Laur, stop doing this because it's not popular enough. I'm like, nope, no, this is just all me, and yeah, I enjoy drawing the things that I do.
We gonna get to that comic. Just wait. What are some specific roadblocks you like to watch out for? And this could be on the job. This could be anything creative you do.
One of the biggest ones that I know I still struggle with, like from time to time, is just living with the idea that your taste and your skill set will not always be on the same level. So I heard this from Ira Glass, who does the This American Life podcast, that your taste can be killer, right? Like, you've seen so many movies, so many cartoons, so many great comics, you've read all of that, and you know what good is. So like,
Mhm.
what like bad stuff is, what good is. So like, you can tell what good is, but your skill set often not quite up to that level. And this is, for all artists in general, like your skill sets are never quite will match your killer taste, because you've seen the best of the best and you look up to the best of the best, and that's going to be your goal. And you'll always feel that frustration that like your taste and skill set is not on the same level. So part of being an artist is living with that creative frustration and knowing that, there's still more to like improve on. There's still more things to learn. There's still lots and lots of practice that you still need to do, like to be the best artist that you think you can be. And sometimes it's like so overwhelming. You're like surrounded by amazing, incredible artists, right? And I'm like, oh, what am I doing here? I have massive imposter syndrome sometimes. And, being a woman of color, like that's like triplified.
Mm-hmm.
So, the imposter syndrome is real, but at the end of the day, it just helps to think you're not as bad as you think you are, but you're not also as good as you think you are. And like if you think you're like already the best of the best, I'm like, oh, you could get into trouble thinking that
Mm-hmm.
way because then you stop learning. You
Mm-hmm.
stop improving yourself. And you're also not like the worst artist like ever. Like the like all your stuff doesn't look quite right and stuff. I'm like, no, if you're committing to practice, if you're committing to study and you're taking the classes and you're learning even outside of your working hours, you are getting to a space where you're not the worst artist that you think you are. Like if you're just conscious about studying what you want to get better at,
Mm-hmm.
you're already way ahead of like a lot of people who maybe take it for granted, right? Like, oh, I know how to draw. I know how to do this, but then not understand like, oh, their boards are not filmable or we can't use these because, things don't hook up or you didn't create the map that makes things simpler, like things to be very clear, like what's the
Mm-hmm.
relationship between the two characters, because suddenly in the one shot they're over here by the door and suddenly in the next shot they're by the window. So there's so much of storyboarding that has to be done correctly, and it's hard to keep them all, like, you're juggling like a lot of roles here. you're
Yeah.
you're a director, you're an actor, you are the cinematographer, you are you're sometimes like a bit of the writer because like something's missing here and you have to like transition it properly. So
Mm-hmm.
those are a lot of roles, and you're not going to be perfect on all of them unless you're a genius. I'm not a genius, like be kind to yourself, because it's all artists struggle with your own skill sets and your goals, not having achieved those artistic goals. I struggle with color. Like I'm a pretty fast artist, I would say, but I don't know anything about color, and it's not really as relevant to my job. But I feel like as an artist who occasionally likes to do fan art, I'm like, I want to do prettier colors, or I want to get better at this too. So also cultivate that sense of curiosity over things that may not necessarily be a part of your, like career related stuff, because that often leads to inventiveness. Because creativity is like, that opportunity to mix stuff up together and come up with different answers, right? And that only happens when you have all kinds of different stimulus that informs your creativity.
What resources did you use and what would you recommend for someone else trying to break in?
So definitely CDA, CGMA, which is the concept. No, sorry, Computer Graphics Academy. Like they also have online classes. And nowadays, oh my gosh, you have Schoolism, you have, like, I'm forgetting his name, Rad Seacrest's
Mm.
online schools. There's Brainstorm, I believe, also in Burbank, that also offer online classes now. So there's so much more online structured learning classes for specifically storyboarding. For artists, I know a lot of people love Instagram, and a lot of artists are on Instagram, but I actually like Twitter because you can also see a lot of artists both share um perspectives in the industry, which you don't quite get on Instagram, or at least maybe I don't see it because I don't follow like
Yeah.
the stories, Instagram stories and stuff.
And
Like
there's
I
salty animator, and that's kind of about it.
yes. I maybe I don't follow the stories as easily using the stories. Um, but on Twitter, they do share like a lot of advice, a lot of resources as well, and perspectives in the industry, like as working artists. So concerns with the union and important negotiations that are happening right now. Shout out to our incredible negotiation staff that are working at this moment, to help get us better support and pay and the respect that animation industry workers deserve, because
Mm-hmm.
we're working straight through this pandemic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't stop like live action studios did, when this pandemic started and lockdown was happening. We were all just like kind of stuck in our homes and drawing. So yeah, the Twitter was one of them to keep in touch and basically like stay in the know, to be aware of things that are going on in the industry. I like a lot of resources online that teach you how to get better at filmography. A lot of YouTube channels like Studio Binder that teach like how to like which shots are better for which moments. Cinematographers, so like watch out for and like learn from. There's lots of wonderful resources like this now, like animation, little bits of acting, that help improve a scene. I love think his name is Jean-Marc Denis. I could have messed that up, but
I think
I'll
I
send
know who
you.
you're talking
Yeah, who
about.
does like
The
animation acting lessons every Thursday.
yeah.
And I love that channel because it's all about these small moments that you don't usually catch. And this is tailored to like the concerns that I love doing, which is I'm a storyboard artist that loves handling the acting scenes, like the more so than like the big sakuga action sequences. I particularly thrive, I think, if you like have multiple characters in one room talking about something important, because that is a very challenging assignment for a lot of people. But I love staging and blocking and making meaning out of the staging and blocking, and giving characters like specific little things to do that brings out their character more, because like the way a person sits on a chair is different from some like from 4 different characters, right? Because if a character is more confident, the way they sit is going to be more confident, and if a character is shy, the way they sit is going to be like much more like petite, or much more closed off, right? So like I love delving into more like ways to like help improve on acting. And then there's gesture stuff. DreamWorks had like an ongoing life drawing class. So like I recommend life drawing, gesture drawing classes all the time. And there's free ones online. So you could feel free to practice doing that and drawing, without having to worry too much about anatomical correctness necessarily. It's like, did you capture the pose of the character in like 30 seconds or in a minute? Because it's not about storyboarding, it's not about like being the most detailed, being the most beautiful drawing, right? It's about drawing lots of mini drawings, right? Like panels, essentially, like drawing all of that in, you can have like over 200 panels in one particular sequence, because this is a medium that is moving. So you can't it's not just about one beautiful drawing. It's
Yeah.
about lots and lots of clear and understandable drawings.
Exactly. Lore,
Mhm.
what was your upbringing like?
My upbringing in the Philippines was very, for the most part, peaceful. I say for the most part because, what family doesn't have its own like problems, shenanigans, etc.
Right.
Um, I was very shy as a kid. I remember being like so shy that I wasn't even like raising my hand in classes because like I just didn't want to be perceived most of the time. Like, um, and the teacher would tell my parents like she always knows the answer, but when I call her, but she needs to like raise her hand more. I'm like, oh, I just didn't want to call attention to myself. Okay, let's say that. I remember during recesses and lunch, I would spend most of my time at the library. We had like a teeny library like in my grade school. It was an all girls Catholic private school. So we had nuns, but they weren't like the teachers. And it was fairly rigid, like, like they emphasize like, studies, and it was a very good school for that. So not straight A's necessarily, but like I had, I was a good student. I was probably like 12th in my batch of like 200 people. Weird statistic to remember, but I remember being like, oh, okay, I'm not good enough to be in the top 10, but for some
Oh,
reason, but but I'm like, oh, I'm up there, I guess. Okay. So
you're in the top 20.
I was in the top 20, but that didn't count maybe. So, but I did remember the first time that I was, like, actually connecting with people because I even remember. Okay, sorry, this is, like, all of a rant. I remember watching kids play in the playground. I'm like, "That looks like fun," and then would just, like, hang out by myself because, like, super shy, again, super, super shy. And it wasn't until, like, maybe 5th grade or something, like, super late, like, way later than usual, that I ended up having friends that I connected with. And I remember it's because, my friend Bernice at the time was like, "Do you watch X-Files?" And I said, like, "I actually do. I caught one of those episodes, like, in, late one night, and, this stuff's pretty cool, blah, 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 blah." And so, like, I connected with someone who watched like a weird show that no one else in my class was like watching. So already I was like, I'm a weirdo. Like because like everybody else was like having lunches with each other and stuff like that. And it took me forever to like be connected to that. I'm like, oh, this is what friends are like. Like, people calling me up like outside of like classes, and then suddenly during the summer people were calling my house. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh.
This is this experience. So having spent all that time by myself, I read so much, and I also drew and wrote a lot, like writing. I say writing, quote unquote writing, but really it was like, oh, I'm gonna take this storyline from my other favorite TV show, and this storyline from Archie, and then this storyline. Like it was more of like mashing things together, and then like in the summer of 1999, I did this massive crossover fiction, like fanfic of like my
Hey.
characters from Voltron and characters from like what is it, Batman the animated series, and Free Willy the cartoons, like
Oh,
all of that.
dang.
Like,
Oh,
mm,
even Free
and then pairing them up, and like when like basically my professional start at writing was like, now kiss.
Willy. I feel like that's how many of us start, was just now
Now
keys.
kiss. Yes. So yeah, that was my upbringing. I want to say like, yeah, like there was a lot of creative freedom because my parents like really didn't care. Like, and there wasn't like a cultivating of the art into something more formal, like, oh, you should go into painting, etc. Because I'm the eldest of 4 children, so that was a little tough on my parents in the Philippines. Education was their big priority, but like extracurricular activities was probably was like a little bit beyond them. So I didn't have any art classes back then, but I loved cartoons, I loved comics. So like, I was making my own comics, I was drawing, and I wasn't making any trouble for my parents. So I guess, they didn't mind because I was just there in a corner drawing. a lot of time spent kind of in my own head and not unfortunately, this is not going to be the same case for kids growing up nowadays because social media is such a powerful distractor. And, like all of your friends are on social media. And nowadays, that's the only way that we get to interact with other people anymore. But it's important that you kind of still do it if you especially if you're an artist. It's like just keep drawing, just keep doing stuff that makes you happy as an artist, whether that's crafting or whether that's like coloring, that time with yourself, that flow state, as they say, where you just completely forget that time is passing because you're so in the zone. That's
Mm-hmm.
so important both for like your own mental health and just your connection with yourself too. I mean, we talk about connections with other people all the time, but as someone who likes people but needs that, as an introvert, needs that time with myself and for myself to re-energize, my reading part, my drawing part, all of that is like so important to me. And yeah, like I don't have FOMO when I like say no to a get together or a hangout or an invite and stuff because I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to recharge now, like it's been a long day, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay, let me just spend that with myself and drawing or reading or just doing stuff like kind of on my own. That's important too. So don't neglect that.
It's that time.
Yeah.
I want to know about Polterguys.
Oh, okay. So to give you the elevator pitch, Poltergeist is about a young college girl who ends up moving into a house that's filled with ghost guys. And since she's the only one that can see them, she has to help them resolve their unfinished businesses. And Poltergeist was a project that I started back in, I want to say 2009 to 2010 after one of the places that I was working at. I got laid off and they went under. Like the company completely went under because the economy was really awful back then. I think
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
bad.
2008. Yeah, post
Yeah.
2008. Um so I took stock and I was like, what do I want to do next? Now that like I suddenly had all this free time, and what I really wanted, like as part of like my big checklist to do like in life, was to have like books, like or to make my own comic and to have it actually printed, like in my hand or like on a stand, right, like on a bookshelf on like shops because back when they still had borders, I'd be like looking around all that time and like just staring at like bookshelves and like someday, like, this would be really cool. I would be really cool to be like part of that someday. And so, like lots and lots and lots of soul searching to figure out like what is it that I want to write about. I grew up watching a lot of ghost movies, like the movie Ghost, Heart and Souls, which is an early Robert Downey Jr. 1990s rom com starring like Robert Downey Jr. and a bunch of like ghosts that he knew since he was a baby. And then what else had like ghosts? Oh, The Frighteners. Like, oh, why are the protagonists always like middle-aged guys?
Mm.
Why can't it be like a young female like student, like like a college age girl? Why can't it be like that? Because like Buffy did like the high school, like I'm a vampire slayer, but I'm also in high school. And between all of those inspirations and things that I really really loved growing up, I was like, huh, i think I see a way through this. And then I also love reverse harem manga stories, right? Or on High School Host Club, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, oh yeah, I can have like, this girl surrounded by cute ghost guys. And that's the story. Not quite, but that's the premise. That's the premise that I ended up with. And then, coming up with a story for that took several drafts, and I was very happy to have like a best friend that took screenwriting at the time, and he was helping me like, you can make this story stronger by doing this, and you know helping me form the story that I wanted to tell. And So I was working on comic pages all throughout 2011, I want to say. And then I was lucky enough to have like some funds to put this up on a website and talk about it like on Twitter, because Twitter was out by then, like 2009, right? Post 2009. And have friends that are already in the comics community that was willing to like plug it out. I'm like, hey, she updated. As I was like finishing up these comic pages, I had two opportunities that basically sort of fell in my lap. Like the Zarek grant was a grant that's um, awarded by the Zarek Foundation, which is a foundation set up by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles guys. I remember, and funded gave you funding for a small press published work. So something that like just self publishing your own material. And this was also the time that Kickstarter was just starting up. And like, oh, we were discovering that um, comic artists can use this platform to like fund their projects. So I was lucky enough to have funding from both because Zarek grant eventually stopped offering those grants because Kickstarter was becoming this massive force for the industry. So that took care of my printing issues. Design wise, I knew my way around InDesign, and taste and skill, right? Like I had help designing the Poltergeist logo because like I knew what a good logo looks like, but I didn't quite know how to get there. So,
Mm-hmm.
I hired some help with like, can you help me make like this logo that sort of like fits within my genre? And then designing covers also was like an iterative process. So I was lucky enough that I was interested in all aspects of that work. Nowadays, I don't think I'll be into it as much. Like I'd probably try to hire out more help for it because, as much as like I had fun figuring that stuff out and doing it on my own, keeping 500 physical books in one space, like I tend to like have
Mm.
small apartments in general, was also like, whew, where do I shove this massive box of like of books, because like there's not enough space in the apartment. So definitely like stocking, inventory, pre-production for like the covers and stuff, I'm
Mm-hmm.
more willing to outsource. And selling Poltergeist too was fun, because like I was in anime conventions, like smaller press conventions at local libraries. I was able to give Poltergeist to, as not commission, but like to like local comic book shops because I was still in Michigan at the time. So like I was able to give it on consignment, and was able to see my stuff on bookshelves, which
Ooh.
blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's on a bookshelf. It's on my actual bookshelf. So it's brought so much kind of joy to my life in so many different ways, right? Like meet and getting to meet like some of my artist heroes because we were tabling in the same convention. That was really cool, and I get to share it with other people who like comics and people who like manga. So like there's it's brought me so much joy in my life. And even though like it's taking forever now because I have a full-time job where I'm drawing all day, and sometimes the last thing I want to do is like keep drawing, like after the end of a work day, because like I said, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work drawing your own comics, writing your own stuff. But honestly, I can't imagine like just stopping and not doing it like for the rest of my life. I'm gonna keep doing it because it's the thing that I would be doing if I had, no one is paying me to do this. And if I get like a million bajillion dollars like tomorrow, it's the thing that I'm still going to do, right? I just feel like most myself when I'm drawing my own character and writing and drawing my own characters. And so it's that kind of a project for me, not just Poltergeist, but like writing and drawing my own stuff. And yeah, I hope that it's other people find that precious thing too, that doesn't have to be monetized, like there's so many. And even this, like with Poltergeist, there's such an easy transition to like, oh yeah, you know, you should be selling your comics, and you know, you should putting it up on Webtoon. No offense to the people who do that and, you know, are building audiences and stuff like that, but this comic Poltergeist and the comics that I do don't have to be a part of that. I can just draw it for my own sake, and I want to encourage people to have hobbies that are like that, that don't have to be monetized. You know, you don't have to constantly hustle. But I know that's hard too, because, you know, we live in a capitalism and there's never enough money to go around. But like I sincerely hope that you still keep those hobbies that don't have to be hustled and monetized. Yeah.
What tips would you give to someone who's looking to start a comic?
I'd say if you want to start a comic, start smaller or shorter. You know, my mistake with Poltergeist was probably like choosing to make a story that I know is going to be 6 books long. And now that I'm older, I kind of want to tell different stories now with like my experience, and like things I want to say are different from the things I wanted to say like a decade ago. So, you know, start smaller, shorter, like more manageable projects first, instead of like this epic, like 78 volume series that you want to start. I'm like, yeah, those are cool too, but you know, it's more fun to finish things and to have finished things like under your belt,
Yeah.
to help build that confidence, right? So brush up on like drawing, brush up on writing, because both of those, you know, if you learn drawing, because like for comics, you're usually drawing everything. But nowadays, if you have Clip Paint Studio, you know, there's like all kinds of assets. You can use 3D programs to like make your little bedroom here. So like there's so many like resources and things like that that are available to you. And that's why I like, you know, following artists on Twitter, because I wouldn't have known that. I'm like, oh, there's a software that could do this, or oh, you know, there's like a brush that can make braids, you know, automatically for you, so you don't have to draw like the braid
What kind of
constantly.
braids?
Yeah, like all
Send me
kinds
that
of like
brush.
all kinds of brushes that reduce the amount of work, you know, that needs to be done for a certain look, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I like following artists on Twitter. Um, so like brushing up on drawing will help you be a better artist in general. Brushing up on writing also helps you become a better artist, because writing, especially the kind that I like, which is screenwriting, which is writing for a visual medium, helps you focus on what you want to show and ultimately say. Because once you start thinking visually, right? If you're like brushing up on screenwriting, if you start thinking visually, then you can tell stories like with more subtlety, and you know, exposition doesn't have to be dumped like a massive essay in front of your beautiful comic, which is
Mm-hmm.
a visual medium, right? You want your audience to be involved and engaged, instead of like turned off by like, oh, I didn't know I had to read all this homework before I like get into the story, right?
Right.
So brushing up on writing, brushing up on drawing can only help you like with your artistic career. So both ways, you know, following other artists because they have like good tips and strategies, you know, like lettering. I made it a point to like care about lettering, because I like good design. I like good presentations, you know. Um so I didn't choose Comic Sans for my for my
Hey.
as cute and as useful as Comic Sans is for like
Oh, you
other
don't have
people.
to. You don't have to talk nice about Comic Sans. No.
Like you know, I chose like a better typeface for my lettering, and you know, brushed up on that one too, because lettering in itself, you know, is its own profession, and to compose and make sure that the words that you read on a page will flow properly,
Mm-hmm.
like, and guide your eye throughout the page. So all of these separate like bodies of knowledge, I want to say, can only help with like comics and storytelling and composition too. So
Yeah.
composition is is its own thing, because you want to be as clear as possible and to be guided across the page. You don't want to be confused reading panel number 5 before panel number 4, because the punchline is in panel number 5. So yeah, all of those things like help you become a better artist and storyteller.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
Ooh.
What do you feel are the next steps in your journey?
I'm a big fan of remixes. Like I've mentioned before that like there's all these kinds of input and stimulus, right? Anime, manga, and I watch dramas, indie dramas, or TV dramas, sitcoms. I'm just interested in a lot of different kinds of storytelling. And my hope is that I could bring some of that, like, and my my love for these stories in the stories that I'm privileged enough to tell, right? It's not that like, oh, I want to like start my own studio someday, because that's so far off ahead that I'm only thinking of like, how can I be a better board artist right now? How can I be a better story artist right now? And I would like ideally that I can tell stories from more different points of view. A lack of diversity and a lot of like executives and like people that are in charge of things, and that sort of like that hinders the kinds of stories that we want to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, someday in the future I would love to have that space be more opened up and to be telling those kinds of stories and in better ways too. So I just want to be part of like projects that have important things to say or have meaningful things to say, and I hope to be at that level where they entrust me with telling those kinds of stories. Yeah, it's not quite like, yeah, I want to direct something, because like I don't know. Like I need to be
Hey.
strong. I need to be a way stronger like storyteller, and and keep learning, and learn how to manage people. So like I don't necessarily know if that's in the cards for me, but
Mm-hmm.
um I'd like to be a stronger storyteller in general. So like that's, to me, that's like good enough of a goal for me
Yeah.
to start with.
Okay, now's the time for rapid questions where I'm going
Oh,
to ask you some questions and
okay.
you're just going to answer them as quickly as possible.
Okay, okay.
Are you ready?
Okay.
And here, let's go. Favorite
Okay.
color?
Purple.
Favorite smell?
Jasmine.
Ooh. Cat or dog?
Cat.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Favorite number?
3.
Favorite letter?
L.
Least favorite letter?
F.
Least favorite smell?
um, the smell of a wet towel that was dried in sunlight.
Oh. Best hype song?
Porter Robinson. Shelter. Porter
Okay.
Robinson and Maddie and Shelter.
Top 3 anime?
Oh my gosh. Full Metal Alchemist, Cowboy Bebop, and I want to say Vision of Escaflowne.
Oh, okay. Some classics here. And call or text?
Text?
And give me a word that starts with the letter W and it can't be a name.
Wallaby.
I think someone already said that on a different episode, so you're going to have to give me a different answer.
West?
The direction?
Yes. Because I remember, oh my god, there was a boy band that was like West something, and then there was like, and then I was
that
thinking
sounds
about
like it's
West
a name.
Wing.
That
Okay.
sounds like it's a name.
No, that's why I said West, the direction. No.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That One Direction. Okay. Fine, I shall accept it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Laur, for speaking with us today. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any social media you would like to share with us?
Yes. You can find me over at Twitter. I go by Laurbits both on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, you find me usually yelling and talking about anime and manga that I'm watching and reading. So be prepared for that. And on Instagram, I tend to share like fan art of those series that I'm watching and reading.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. Yeah, you can find my web comic Poltergeist at poltergeist.laurbits.com. So that's Poltergeist with a GUIS, and then Laurbits is LAURBITS.
It's adorable handle, by the way. Very cute. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Please follow Creating in Color on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to submit any questions for upcoming guests through our social media or creatingincolorcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in following me, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch.tv at Maybe It's Kaybe. Thanks to Namikaze for creating the ending theme. You can find more of his music on his SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Namikaze. That's NAMIKAZE. Thanks to everyone who's sharing Creating in Color with their friends, their family, and their coworkers. And we have a donation message from Priscilla. And she says, Creating in Color is a fantastic, inclusive podcast that really sheds lights on the trials and tribulations of being a person of color trying to achieve their dreams in animation. 10 out of 10, we stand Kaybe. Aw, she's so sweet.
She's awesome. Love you, Priscilla. You can't see this, but I'm making hearts for you.
I see the hearts, and I can confirm there are hearts. If you are interested in joining our donors list, you can make a one-time or monthly donation through our PayPal or coffee account, coffee.com/creatingincolor, or purchasing Creating in Color merch on Star Rain Studios on Etsy. Links available via our link tree. Before we wrap up, do you have any departing words of wisdom for everyone listening?
I just wanted to say, KB, thank you so much again for inviting me over to your podcast. It was a lot of fun talking with you and getting a chance to like share some of my experiences like working in the industry. And I want to encourage people out there and if you're interested in animation that it is possible, like when I was in the Philippines, joining the animation industry was just like, oh, this is an impossible thing for me, because there were no resources. There were, my parents didn't encourage this kind of dream like career path for me because no one in my family was like part of this industry, and no one could dream that this was possible. So yeah, like I hope, like hearing from like a Filipino Chinese girl that like studied her way through online classes, like this is possible for you if you're willing to do the hard work to get your work right and have a portfolio that shows off your abilities and your willingness to do the hard work. Good luck. Yeah, and I hope to be working with you someday.
Aw, well said. And thank you again for being on the podcast, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. This has been Creating in Color. Keep striving, keep trying, keep creating. Bye.
Bye.
Yay.
Yay.